Record. There we go. So just a couple things before we get started. I will ask if, and we should get started. I'm seeing that the time's a little after 10. This shouldn't take our whole time like the Roots Tech one did last month. Um, but I will ask if you could all mute yourselves until the end when we have our questions and comments section. And you should all be seeing the slides right now, or the title slide right now. And I will do my best to keep going. So good morning, and thank you for joining me for sharing family recipes, preserving heirloom memories, and more. I'm Kate Kisselstein, one of the librarians in the Local History and Genealogy Department at Onondaga County Public Library's Central Library in downtown Syracuse, New York. And sharing family recipes, having grown up, as many of you, I'm sure, um, have with family members who love to cook. I grew up with my maternal grandfather ran a diner for over 30 years. It was Palmer's Diner in Baldwinsville, New York, and I just have such fond memories of helping him, as you'll see, with making his recipes, and the thought of the chance of losing those was was just something that drew me to wanting to learn more about genealogy, um, or learning more about the family history, and therefore learning more about genealogy. So with that, I'll switch us to the overview. Today we'll be covering preserving family recipes, and a lot of the tips that we'll learn here will also apply to any older family documents, really. I'll take you through the 4 key factors that affect document preservation, including methods of organizing your recipes with an eye to preservation, and an overview of some preservation methods you can do yourself at home or through your local library. And then lastly, we will have time for questions and comments. So welcome to the kickoff to ALA's Preservation Week. Initially, when I was developing the publicity for this, I thought that I had read that Preservation Week was this week. It actually starts tomorrow. No, it actually starts Sunday, April 27th, and will run through May 3rd. So this is the kickoff to ALA's Preservation Week, which the theme is Preserve the Past, Shape the Future, Inspiring the Next Generation. And this week-long campaign, which was first observed in 2010, offers an opportunity to celebrate collecting and preservation in our community, and to highlight our libraries and other cultural institutions as a source of preservation information. It is ALA's belief that memories and treasures should last a lifetime and beyond. And isn't that always the goal of any genealogist? And that these physical and digital materials support both community and cultural identities. So why Preservation Week? It's an initiative of the American Library Association that encourages individuals and institutions to protect our shared cultural heritage. It shines a spotlight on the importance of preserving personal, family, and community collections alongside institutional archives. This year's theme, Preserve the Past, Shape the Future, Inspiring the Next Generation, is the perfect backdrop for today's topic. Recipes are more than just ingredients. They're stories that connect generations. And let's explore how to keep those memories alive. So why do recipes matter to us? When we talk about preserving family recipes, we're not just talking about the ingredients and the instructions. We're talking about memory, tradition, and identity. For me, one of the clearest examples of this is my Grandpa Palmer's pies. He was known actually as the Pie Man of Baldwinsville. He was known throughout Baldwinsville for those pies, including his custard pies and even his chicken pot pies. I still remember watching him roll out pie crusts for church suppers, community fundraisers, or even Meals on Wheels deliveries. One time I even got to help him for McCary Day, now known as Seneca River Day, which is Baldwinsville's version of a town day, held every July. And I felt so proud to be in the kitchen with him. His famous pie crust recipe came from his wife, my grandma Palmer, who had learned it actually from his mother, um, Neva Ford Palmer. But Grandpa made it his own with a clever tweak. Instead of cutting in cold shortening, as is the traditionally called for, he would melt the shortening gently and mix it with ice water, which helped him make his pies faster. His personal record, 121 pies in a single day made from scratch. Thankfully, my family realized the importance of preserving that recipe while Grandpa was still with us. We have photos of the handwritten cards, typed up versions, and even pictures of him baking, as you see here. That's a picture of him in the kitchen at his diner rolling out some pie crust. Um, and yes, I even have tried to make his pies myself. I once brought 2 apple pies to a church potluck in Massachusetts, and I didn't use shortening. I opted to use the lard instead, which is what my great grandmother's version had originally called for, because of course they didn't have vegetable shortening back in her time. The pies turned out beautifully, but I had forgotten to warn everyone that they weren't vegetarian. So one of my friends gave me a look of pure horror when she found out because she commented, "Oh, this is so delicious. What did you use?" And then I told her. And that, my friends, is why I always label my ingredients for a potluck now. That recipe has fed family, friends, neighbors, and in the mid 1940s, it even helped to fundraise for the very first library in the village of Baldwinsville. My grandpa's legacy lives on in every flaky, delicious bite. And that's what makes family recipes worth preserving. So we'll jump straight in to key preservation issues. There are 4 key environmental factors that can affect preservation. And the first, they are temperature and relative humidity, light exposure, air pollution and dirt, such as food stains, and handling. When we talk about preserving family recipes, the kitchen can be both a place of love and a bit of danger, at least when it comes to heirloom paper. Think about Thanksgiving morning. Steam rising from boiling pots, the oven running for hours. It's cozy, but it's also exactly the kind of environment that can do a number on your original recipe cards, especially if they're handwritten or fragile. Paper is surprisingly sensitive to shifts in temperature and humidity. Older documents are more vulnerable, and even brief exposure to heat or steam can cause ink to smear or paper to weaken. Ideally, your original recipe card should be stored in a space always around 65 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit. And if you think about it, our ovens, we need to cook at degrees of 350 or higher. So the less they're kept around a heated oven, the better. Um, and the relative humidity of 30 to 50% and no major fluctuations. That's a lot harder to achieve in places like attics, basements, or unheated garages, so it's best to avoid storing them there. Cooler temps actually slow down chemical decay and discourage pests. Just be careful not to go too dry. If humidity dips below 15%, paper can get brittle and crack. So if you want to keep the original safe, it's best to make a copy for daily use and let the heirloom rest somewhere quiet, cool, and dry. A general rule of thumb, if it's a place you'd avoid during a heat wave or a snowstorm, it's probably not safe for your recipe or heirloom documents either. Next issue we have is light exposure, something that can sneak up on even the most careful recipe keepers. Ongoing exposure to light, whether from direct sunlight or even overhead indoor lighting, can cause permanent and irreversible damage. Paper becomes yellowed, brittle, and ink can fade to the point where you can barely read it anymore. That handwritten note from your great grandmother with the coffee cake recipe, if it's framed and hanging in a sunny kitchen, it may look lovely now, but it could be slowly fading away. The best practice is to store the original in a dark, stable environment, like a box or a folder, and display a high quality scan or photocopy instead. That way, the story stays visible, but the original stays safe. And while I don't recommend trying to read by candlelight or open flame in a dark kitchen, the takeaway here is when it comes to heirlooms, the less light, the better. So let's talk about another invisible threat to your family recipes: air pollution and dirt. It's really easy, especially when you're cooking, for tiny food particles like ground herbs and spices to settle on your recipe cards without you even realizing it. And if you're reaching for a recipe while your hands are dusty with flour or cinnamon, it can cause small scratches or even permanent staining onto fragile paper. It's not just dust and food particles either. Smoke from cooking, whether it's from frying bacon or that moment when something gets just a little too crispy in the oven, can leave residues that weaken paper over time. And yes, that's why I couldn't resist using this image of Robin Williams as Mrs. Doubtfire putting out the fire on his blouse. Hopefully, you don't have quite that dramatic of a kitchen disaster, but it's a good reminder that heat, smoke, and grease affect more than just dinner. It can affect your most treasured family heirlooms even more than just your recipes. The takeaway: try to keep original recipes out of the kitchen chaos. Use a clean photocopy or a digital version for everyday cooking and tuck that heirloom safely away. Next up, we have handling. And handling may seem obvious, but it's such a common cause of damage that it deserves its own spotlight. Older, fragile documents, especially original recipe cards or those that were written down in composition notebooks, for example, need to be handled with clean, dry hands. And it's important to actually avoid lotions or oils, as is so common if you've been, trying to keep your hands clean when you're cooking, and then you want to put on some lotion because your hands feel dry. Um, uh, and that's easy enough when you first start cooking, but as the kitchen heats up and the action picks up, it gets harder to maintain. Even if you're someone who likes to clean as you go, which is wonderful for the kitchen, it's easy to forget that natural oils from our skin can seep into paper over time, weakening fibers and smudging ink. And of course, any direct spills, whether it's tomato sauce, onion juice, or cinnamon dust, can leave permanent stains or even cause rips and tears. That's why, again, it's best to use a clean photocopy or printout for day-to-day kitchen work and keep the original heirloom safe and away from the cooking flurry. Now that we've talked about how to protect your original family recipes, let's spend a few minutes talking about how to organize them. And the truth is, there's no one perfect system. As Valerie J. Frey wisely says in her book, Preserving Family Recipes, organization isn't one size fits all. So mull over your own needs and habits. Some people, oop, there we go. There we go. Some people like meticulously labeled binders. Some people prefer digital files they can search. Some want to group recipes by cook, some by course, some by family memory. The key is finding an approach that feels manageable and meaningful to you, something you'll actually use and enjoy coming back to. Organizing, planning ahead, part 1. When organizing your family recipes, start by taking inventory of what you already have. Are you are we talking about a handful of treasured recipes or an extensive collection passed down through generations? Consider how your collection might grow, perhaps through family reunions, discoveries in attics, or even vintage newspaper clippings. Next, think about how often you'll need to update or share the collection. For example, will you be adding newly uncovered recipes from older relatives or reorganizing as you digitize older documents? Physical considerations are also important. If the recipes are used frequently in the kitchen, you might need a lightweight, easy to handle system. For family members with visual challenges, large print or digital formats can be invaluable for accessibility. And portability can be key when sharing recipes with family members at reunions or events, or when traveling to preserve recipes from distant relatives. A digital format or a compact binder might be ideal for such situations. Think about your willingness to create duplicates. Transcribing handwritten recipes, photocopying or scanning original recipe cards can preserve the heirlooms while making them more usable in day-to-day cooking. For recipes clipped from vintage cookbooks or newspapers, consider how to keep track of them. You might add them to your family's recipe binder or create a section for these historical gems within your archive. Lastly, access matters. For older recipes, creating keyword searchable digital files can simplify finding that cherished dish, while physical collections benefit from clear labeling and thoughtful organization to make browsing easy. Now we'll go into some preservation methods. So how can we go about preserving these treasured family recipes? There are actually a few different methods, and often a combination of them works best. First, you could simply rewrite the recipe onto a new recipe card. That's certainly a time-honored tradition for sharing recipes. But one thing to consider is the sentimental value tied to the original handwriting. For example, my grandfather's pie crust recipe is preserved in my mother's careful cursive copy. And while it's beautiful, there still is something special about seeing his original writing, smudges and all. Another option is to type up the recipe on a computer. This does make it easier to read and share, especially through email or social media. But again, it can lose that personal, tactile connection to the original card. A simple but effective method is to place the original recipe card in a protective sleeve. While a plastic sandwich bag can work in a pinch, archival quality acid-free polypropylene sleeves are much better. They offer stronger protection against deterioration and physical wear and tear, and they're especially handy when cooking recipes that involve a lot of splattering. You might also photocopy the original recipe card. This is great if the card can lay flat on the copier glass. Plus, you can even include a photo of the dish or of the person who created it alongside the recipe for extra context. Or you could scan the original recipe card. Scanning best preserves the handwriting digitally and lets you create backups without putting further stress on the paper itself. And finally, you could combine several of these methods. Organize recipes into a binder, create a scrapbook that tells the story behind each dish, or even self-publish a family cookbook. The right choice depends on your goals, your timeline, and the resources you have available. So first up, we have the writing or typing the recipe. Original heirloom documents, like family recipes and cookbooks, need to be treated carefully. As I've said, the less they are handled, and always with clean, dry hands free from lotions, the longer they'll survive. One great option is to transcribe your favorite vintage recipes by hand or by typing them out. But when you do this, take care when updating measurements, instructions, or ingredients. I'll provide some helpful conversion charts in the handout after today's session, because older recipes sometimes use measurements that don't quite match our modern equivalents. For example, a pinch and a dash are often considered about the same amount, less than an eighth of a teaspoon. A soup spoon measured about 2 teaspoons, not 3. And I'll admit, I've mistakenly used a soup spoon thinking it equaled a tablespoon. That's why some of my recreated dishes didn't quite taste like the originals. The real benefit of this method is that the original heirloom recipe stays safe. You can carefully store it in an archival acid-free folder in a cool, dry place, away from light, basements, and attics. That way, future generations can still experience not just the taste of tradition, but the look and feel of it too. Next up, we have copying or scanning. Before you copy or scan any original document, the first step is to check it carefully for signs of wear and minor tears. Pay close attention to edges, especially if the document is oversized, or any fold lines, which tend to become more brittle and fragile over time. Whatever you do, please avoid using a document feeder. Those are the automatic feeding mechanisms that can easily tear delicate paper or jam causing permanent damage to an heirloom recipe or page. Instead, always place the document directly on the glass when using a copier or flatbed scanner. If you're working with vintage or antique cookbooks, be especially gentle. You don't want to crack the spine or loosen the pages. And just a quick note, here at Central Library's local history and genealogy department, um, we we do have access, or we will have access again, to a special scanner with a built-in book cradle. It's ideal for digitizing books while minimizing stress to the original to the original spine. If you're scanning at home or on the go, there are mobile apps. One that I use here is called Genius Scan, and it's a great option. You're able to lay the book in a book. If it's a book, you're able to lay it while having it cradled on a table, and you can just scan the pages. It just automatically can gauge where the page is, and you can adjust it afterwards. Um, the free version allows you to capture high quality images and adjust light levels, contrast, and even the angle of the document, all from your smartphone or tablet. Whether you're scanning by machine or by phone, the goal is the same: capture the image clearly while protecting the original. Next up, we have the binder method, and a cookbook binder is probably the quickest and easiest way to preserve those favorite family recipes you find yourself making again and again. You can organize the sections however you like and expand them at any time as new recipes come along. Key to this method, of course, is making copies of your heirloom recipes. That way, you're not exposing the originals to kitchen spills or everyday wear and tear. Personally, I have one of these binders at home. I keep my recipes in sheet protectors, which make it easy to wipe off splatters and stains without damaging the paper. One nice bonus, it's easy to remove a recipe from the binder and make a quick photocopy if a friend or family member asks for a favorite dish. Now, there are a couple of downsides to this method. First, it tends to be organized by personal preference, which is great for you, but may be a little confusing for someone else later on. And second, you may not end up with a full index or table of contents like a traditional cookbook. I'll admit, when I first started my binder, I simply alphabetized it by recipe title without really thinking about categories. I didn't really think I'd be saving that many recipes, as I'm not that much of a cook. But over time, my collection did start to grow, and I reorganized by the type of recipe: sauces, poultry, seafood, and so on. My system tends to follow what protein I have on hand because that's how I plan my meals. The takeaway here is a binder is fast, flexible, and very forgiving. Perfect if you're looking for an easy, expandable way to get started. Next up, we have something that's a little bit similar, and that's the scrapbooking method. So this is great if you're the crafty type, because it can be really fun and creative way to preserve family recipes. You can use copies of the original handwritten recipe along with the typed version and play around with different layouts before committing anything permanently to the page. Scrapbooks also give you the chance to add personal touches, like photographs of the family member who originally made the dish, or even drawings of the food made by younger family members. You can include handwritten notes, memories, or fun family anecdotes alongside the recipe, turning each page into a little time capsule. Now, there are a few things to keep in mind. Scrapbooks can be time consuming to put together, especially if you're designing each page individually. Unless you have helpers and set up something like an assembly line system, scrapbooks aren't quickly reproducible if you want to share them widely with family. And it's important to use acid-free archival quality materials, which can be a little pricier than simply printing recipes on regular copy paper. If you do go this route, definitely keep an eye out for weekly sales at your local craft stores. They can be a great way to stock up without breaking the budget. The big takeaway: scrapbooks are beautiful and deeply personal, but they do require more time, patience, and careful material choices. And this one here, it's actually a mock-up of a scrapbook page, but this one here has my grandfather's pie crust recipe typed out. This is my mom's handwritten copy of his pie crust recipe. That's of my grandfather rolling out the pie crust in his diner's kitchen. And then this is actually a memorial placed near where his diner was located, that talks about how he made 121 pies in one day. So that's just one sample of a scrapbook page. So the last preservation method we'll talk about is the self-publishing method, which is another wonderful option. And it's sometimes called, rather than a family cookbook, this is sometimes called an heirloom cookbook or a community cookbook. There are several online services available that help you publish a cookbook, and many allow for multiple collaborators, so it can truly be a family project, even if everyone lives in different places. These platforms often let you add photos or images alongside each recipe, like a snapshot of grandma baking or a scanned image of the original handwritten card. Just be aware, some services do have restrictions on the size or format of the images you can upload. Some also require a minimum print run, which is fine if lots of relatives want a copy, but can be trickier if only a few family members are interested. Now, there is another great DIY option. You can use a template in Google Docs, Microsoft Word, or Canva to create your own recipe booklet. It does take a little more time, but it's not as hard as it sounds. I actually used to create booklets like this for university conferences, combining multi-page documents into one file for printing. Think of this approach as a sort of electronic scrapbook. You can easily customize the layout. You can include typed recipes and scanned images of the originals, and you can control exactly how you want it to look and feel. Whether you go with an online service or a DIY booklet, the heart of the project is the same: preserving your family's recipes and the stories behind them for future generations. As we wrap up today's program, I want to leave you with one final idea that ties everything together: creating a family heirloom cookbook. Invite family members to contribute their favorite recipes. Include photos, stories, or handwritten notes that make each dish meaningful. You can collect contributions over email, at holiday gatherings, or even through a shared online folder. You don't need fancy publishing software. Simple templates in Word, Canva, or online self-publishing sites can help you build something truly special. Whether you print copies for a family reunion or keep it as a living digital file, it becomes a way to preserve both your family's food traditions and their voices and memories. And remember, all the preservation methods we talked about today: handling originals carefully, digitizing fragile documents, creating copies for daily use, apply not just to recipes, but also to family letters, diaries, cards, and other treasured documents. These same steps can help you protect a whole legacy of memories, not just the ones made in the kitchen. Thank you so much for being here and for caring about the stories and traditions that deserve to be preserved. Before we open it up for questions and comments, let's quickly review a few key takeaways from today. Family recipes are more than instructions, they're heirlooms. By scanning, transcribing, and carefully storing them, we can protect these memories from light, humidity, and handling damage. Organization isn't one size fits all. Choose a method, whether it's a binder, a scrapbook, or a digital archive that fits your collection, your habits, and your family's needs. Preservation techniques apply beyond recipes. The same steps you take to protect old recipe cards can also safeguard letters, diaries, cards, and other family documents. And sharing strengthens memory. Whether it's through a simple binder, a scrapbook, or a collaborative family cookbook, preserving recipes and the stories behind them brings generations together and helps keep traditions alive for the future. Thank you all so much for being part of today's program. I'd love to hear your questions, comments, or even your own family recipe stories. And I will stop sharing here, although I will have one more slide to share. I want to see everybody. Okay. All right. So are there any questions or comments? Yes, Izzy.
I'll apologize for the sound of the lawnmower in the background. I hope that doesn't prevent people from hearing. My question is, I have two very old family cookbooks, family friend cookbooks, the very old recipes. And they're actually published. They're about inch thick. Can you recommend now or later a good, safe place to send or take those cookbooks to get them, or can they be rebound? The spine part is falling apart and pages are coming out, but it's such a treasure, I hesitate to do that. So, do you have any suggestions for that?
Oh, let's see, because you're in South Carolina. I would have to double check. I know I would be double checking with our book repair person who works here. Um, but I can double check and see who who might be able to do that. Because yes, that is something you would want a conservator probably to do if they're that old and the binding is that delicate. You want somebody who can evaluate it. I don't know if you're in any location near say a university that has a library school that might be doing have a preservation lab. That might be a place that they might have an intern um, that would that could take it on, but a a place that does conservation or preservation would be what I would recommend. I know up here in Syracuse, New York, we have Westlake conservators, and they do a lot of different kinds of that work with all sorts of different types of materials. But again, that's up here in Skaneateles, New York. Um,
You've given me two great ideas. We do have a very old library here, university library, as well as two genealogy libraries within reasonable driving distance that I can call and check on, and a genealogy library with some very old books in it, and I'll check with those folks. One is an
they would
artist.
yes, they would best be able to help you find somebody in your area if they can't do it themselves. If they don't have somebody in-house that could do that. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Good. Was there anybody else?
I've kind of a related question.
Mhm.
The um, the scanner you showed, is that a picture of the scanner you have in the library?
Well, it's one we had at the library that we sent out for repair, and we're actually in the process of possibly having to get a new one because that's an older model, but that is one that came from Germany. But it's a book cradle scanner, so the bed of it can adjust according to the weight of the book, so that the spine is never being cracked open, and that better preserves the binding.
And can that scan like a whole book?
Yeah, well, I mean, a page, one or two pages at a time, depending on the size of the book.
Okay, so there's no kind of mechanism that just goes from page to page to page to page to page to page.
It depends on you on the person, having a person there to flip the pages.
Okay, so they physically have to move the pages. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Just because we're dealing with older, we're generally dealing with older books. Yeah. So, but yeah.
Can I ask another scanner question? I'm
Oh,
sorry.
sure.
Um, I, I think the New York uh, Genealogical and Biographical organization has a scanning center in central New York. Is that correct?
Um, I'm not sh I'm not sure about. Do they have one here in
The only
Central New
thing I
York?
know of is CLRC, the consortium of libraries, is you got to get a grant, and they have the means, but that's you got to be connected with the libraries and stuff.
Yeah, that's a good question though. I
Okay.
can check on that.
I have a story.
Oh, sure.
Hi, that relates directly to this. So I have a granddaughter who recently married. Let me turn on my video. I have a granddaughter who recently married. She's been married about a year, but as a wedding gift, my sister wrote to all of the families she was in contact with and did exactly what you suggested. She got them to give her a recipe, and then she got, a cameo picture of them. Sometimes she has a picture of the food or the story behind the recipe, and she put them all in a archival recipe book. It's like got the what 5x6, 4x6 slots. And so she printed each one up on a card, but she also included the story, the picture, and that was her wedding gift to the bride.
What a
Oh,
gift.
that is so wonderful.
Um, and we can add to it.
Oh, what a great idea.
Oh, that's really special.
And on top of that, the bride is actually a cook in a restaurant.
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
So it has already proven its worth.
I'll bet. Oh, wow. That's wonderful. What a
I
great and what
bet.
a great idea, the 4x6 cards. Yeah. That could be added to. Oh, what a wonderful idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have another recipe story, and that is my son-in-law's mother had passed away. And in cleaning out her things, he just handed me her entire recipe box.
Oh, wow.
And so I haven't really done anything with it yet, except that they always mentioned every time they went anywhere, she always had these apple cookies available
Uh-huh.
every time they went to, her house. And so I have actually made that apple cookie recipe. Um,
Oh.
I did another one for a genealogy group. Our genealogy group had a buffet, and everybody was supposed to bring a dish from your family. And so my grandmother had this pound, it's basically a pound cake, but I made it. I made it the way she would have made it, you know, and it took a long time. And it was delicious, but it was a very heavy
Yeah.
cake, you know. Um, so that was another interesting recipe, story. And then I have a cousin who found a recipe from our mutual grandmother who used to make pickles. And she said she must have tried 10 versions because, like you said, it said a dash of this or a
Yeah.
pinch of that. And so she said, I couldn't get it quite right because she remembered
What they did. Yeah.
what the pickles had tasted like.
Yeah.
So she finally came up with a doable recipe that duplicated the one she remembered.
Yeah.
But it took her multiple tries.
Yes, and we have in the Central Library family cookbook that we did in the summer of 2023. I put in my great grandma Morgan's never fail dumplings recipe. Well, trying to test her never fail dumplings recipe, it took us like 5 or 6 tries to get the recipe right. So, but it called for sweet milk of all things, and that was a puzzler at first until we learned that she just meant whole milk as opposed to buttermilk. So, and that but that was one that I took to the, as I said, I'm not a cook very much, but that was the thing is learning the older, what some of these older recipe ingredients and measurements are. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Kate, that reminds me, there's I guess I'm going to call it a cooking show that's on public television with Christopher Kimball, and it's to reconstruct a family recipe. So
Oh,
somebody talks about, my grandmother used to make this, my great grandmother used to make that, but they don't have the recipe, and they have some chefs work on it, based on their description to come up with a recipe that person can bring back to their hometown and serve to their family because it's something they want to share with their family, with their children, grandchildren, whatever.
oh, but
And usually, and again, I'm sure part of it's the pinch and all that stuff that they have to figure out. And it's kind of a trial and error type thing to reconstruct an old family recipe. And then they bring it back to their hometown and serve it to their family. And, usually it's pretty close and to what
yeah,
they remember as, something that they had 50, 60, 70 years ago.
yeah.
Um, it's on around noontime here. Um, Again, it's Christopher Kimball, and I don't know the name of the program. So
But I'll look that up and then I can share that. That sounds great. Sounds like something right up my alley. Yeah.
I've got a question.
Oh, sure.
Hi, thank you.
Yeah.
Um, okay, where do you start? I have a recipe box for my mom, my grandma, my great grandma, my aunt. I have my husband's mother's recipe box and his grandmother's. Where do you suggest blending families? I mean, that to me, it's like I would keep the families separate. Um, but and some of them are like my mom's recipe box has lots of clipped articles or clipped recipes from the magazines, and some are pasted on the cards and some are just stuck in there.
Mm.
um, I don't know if I should be weeding things out or you know
Oh,
what
weeding,
what do we do here?
weeding. Yeah, that's the good question. Yeah, because I can imagine you've got some multiples going on there.
Yeah.
But that is the thing. I kind of think you might want just in case you might want to at least in terms of keeping the family separate, if you do end up deciding to blend, I would definitely keep the source, like this came from so and so, this where you got it from, like it came from this person's recipe box. It was kept, this is where we got it from. Um, but anything that's been pasted on, I'm going to guess it's going to be like with photographs. Don't try and remove it from the card it's on because you'll end up losing what the original. Um, because that I was just yesterday I was just doing a program about preserving photographs, and they were talking about having cards pasted onto a photo album, and it's like you can't remove them because then you'll end up losing the photograph trying to remove it. Um, but yeah, especially I can imagine with the newsprint ones, they're there.
Yeah.
Um, I would say in terms of weeding, which is always, it's like that's a hard thing for any librarian to deal with, um, is weeding. But if you do have duplicates, if they're recipes that exist, that already exist in other collections that you've got,
Mhm.
if there's something that especially that isn't special to the family, and especially if they're ones that you could get out of the newspaper again, I would as
Yeah.
hard as it is to say throw it out, you could gently let those go, I would say.
Oh, I'm going
Um,
to use that term, gently let it go.
yeah. I was like, because it's like I know there are some that could be. It's like I can't believe you got rid of that, recipe. But it's like if it's one that you've got, that's a special one that you can't find again, or if it's got the ones with, it's one of those ones where it's pasted to the card and there's fingerprint smudges all over it, showing that it was used again and again and again. Then maybe it's a favorite, and you could always handwrite it on a card or
Right.
scan the card, and came from the recipe box of, Great Aunt Sophie kind of thing.
What if she said she had mothers and grandmothers? So some of the mothers' recipes may be copies of
Yeah.
what's in the grandmother's recipe box. So I would definitely say the oldest.
Well, you
Right. And
want
some
the
of it,
yeah. Some of them possibly are duplicates, but as you could tell with mine, we've kept the duplicates because we do have my grandfather's pie crust recipe card, my mom's recipe card. We've got my handwritten copy of the recipe card. So it's just been a question of having those. And now that even though I've got it typed, I still have the card. But yeah, it's just kind of that having that tangible. Now that we've got it scanned, could we let it go? Possibly, but there's still something sentimental about having the card itself, I
well,
found.
and a couple of the recipes in my mom's box are from letters that my grandma sent, and she sent the recipe. So
Oh,
I have the duplicate recipes, but they're in different formats in
yeah.
a sense. Another question is like on one of the recipe boxes, which I haven't looked into, it's open. There's no top on it. It's the cards, but they're
Kate's
all
got a Zoom. I
frayed
can't
on
believe
the
you still
top.
have your
And Charlene, you need to mute.
They're all frayed on the top, and I'm afraid to pick it up. I mean, it's crammed full. So how do I start moving into that box? Do I try to find one and pull it out, or do I dump it out, or
Ooh, I would gently try and start pulling out. You may have to with that one, you may have to start from the middle. Look for
oh, okay,
look for one that's maybe a little more stable than the rest in terms of like thickness of the card. And
okay,
like maybe you might have to start with a small chunk.
oh, okay, mm-hmm.
If you can and just gently kind of work it out, wiggle it out, wiggle out like a small chunk. And as long as you don't hear any, if you hear something going, you know, you want to stop and maybe tap it back down.
Okay,
But like gently wiggle it out. And then you can kind of slip one on if it's recipe cards, slip one on its side and you'll know where they came from if there was any order. Like if you accidentally grabbed
okay,
card
yeah.
number 2 out and you need card number 1, you'll know where it came from.
Yeah, I have no idea what I'm going to find in there, whether they're even legible.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, sure thing.
Recipe boxes, I'm finding from the ones I've gotten that they often include things other than recipes. They may include other types of newspaper clippings or notations of family events,
Yes.
that they just stuffed the note in the recipe box.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, they can be treasure troves. Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
recipe books are that way too, where they've made notations of things. And a lot of times they just, like in family Bibles, where people just inserted things
yeah.
because that was the book they had at the moment and they wanted a place to put the paper.
Yeah. Oh, Izzy, you had your hand raised again?
I did. I just have a suggestion for Anne and others. Probably it's an organizing tip more than anything. Um, look at the project that you're trying to attempt, and it can seem overwhelming. A large, as many boxes as you have. Try to start small and do it in times that you have available so it doesn't become so overwhelming to
Oh,
you. It's kind of like organizing a closet or anything. If it's a huge project, you don't want to get unhappy just because of the enormity of the project. So start small, figure out how much time you want to dedicate to it, and go from there. so that it doesn't seem too overwhelming for you.
Yeah.
Thank you. That might be easier said than done, but I appreciate the information and the suggestion.
Yeah.
I'll start slow.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be good. Yeah, it's that proverbial how to eat an elephant. Start off one bite at a time. Yeah. Okay. Oh, and we do.
Kate, I put in the chat that the program is called Milk Street's My Family Recipe with Christopher Kimball and Cheryl Day.
Oh,
And they
okay.
use historic culinary context and modern kitchen know-how uh, to help home cooks create lost and forgotten family recipes.
Is it on
Yeah.
PBS?
It's on PBS, yeah. It's
Yeah.
here in Arizona. It's on, I think, like 11 o'clock or something on a 11:30 on what day? On Saturday. So
On
I don't know what
Saturdays.
it is in New York or any of the other states where folks are from. So
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and Elsie, you mentioned that the handout. Yes, I'll be sending out the handout later on today, actually, along with the Roots Tech handout that I did get finished and I forgot to send out. Um, that'll be those will be coming out, and this video should be I'll be posting on my YouTube channel on Saturday, actually. Since I'm working tomorrow, I can get that done. Yay. Um, those will be up and available. It won't be edited yet, but it'll be up so that people can watch. Trying to be better about it. Yes. So, um, oh, and all right. Are there any other questions or comments? If not, I'm just going to let's see. Oh, there we go. I'm just going to quickly share this again and go to my final slide here. So thank you all so much for joining me today, for sharing family recipes, preserving heirloom memories, and more. If you'd like to explore even more ways to preserve family memories, documents, and local history, be sure to visit our calendar page. You'll find a link right here on the slide, and I'll be sure to send that link out. I'll be sure to send that out with the handout today. And I also just want to quickly mention our next program, which is 1825, A Year of Changes, the Village of Syracuse and its Ties to the Erie Canal, which will be coming up on Friday, May 23rd, 2025, from 10 to 11 a.m. on Zoom. We'll celebrate the 200th anniversary of Syracuse's incorporation as a village and explore how the Erie Canal transformed our region. I'll also be sharing genealogy research tips for tracing ancestors who lived or worked in central New York before 1850, especially around those early canal days. And I'd love to see you there. In the meantime, if you have any other questions after today's session, please don't hesitate to reach out to us, to the department. We're always happy to help. And with that, I'll go back to gallery view. Oh.
Kate, if you have time today, could you send me out that screenshot?
Yes, I will send that. Thank you for the reminder. Screenshot to Scott.
Because I'm curious to know. I'm
Yes.
curious to know.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. Thanks for the presentation today.
Oh, sure. Yes, thank you. Thank you all for coming.
Yeah.
It's good to
Take
see
care,
you.
Miss Bonnie.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Good to see you all.